the villain of the week for this week.
Do, 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 do.
I like how Jawsy that little
Yeah.
jingle is getting. So just as each week we choose a face to go on our Rushmore, we also choose another face to go on our evil Rushmore, our villain of the week. And for this episode, it was rather obvious it was the person who shot Roosevelt in the chest. His name was John Schrenk. He attempted to kill Roosevelt in 1912 when Roosevelt was 54, and it hit his chest. It passed through a 50-page speech, which was about how the progressive cause is greater than any individual, which again is just one of those little pieces of kind of American mythology that I adore, even if it's not true.
Yeah, it's so funny.
You know, it's nice to think that. The man was possibly insane, so I guess we should cut him a little bit of slack. Roosevelt delivered his speech anyway, and also was kind of like, when the guy was getting accosted, basically said, no, don't rough him up or don't lynch him or anything. We're just going to try him regularly. And I think this is a relevant story, even if it's falsified a little bit.
Yeah, it's very Christ-like. Let he who has not sinned cast the first stone.
Just because it shows the importance of having a strong figurehead, even in a democracy, or maybe especially in a democracy, because like when you have a king or queen, they are kind of naturally born significant, whatever your views on that. That's the case. It's bestowed on them at birth. But with a democracy, it's the person that we, in theory, we all choose this person to represent us. So you want this person to be maybe not 80. You know what I mean? And I don't think they have to be some bastion of physical strength and masculinity, but I do think that then it's better when there is a vigor to it.
Yeah, I agree, because it's not like he was that young. Like he was
54.
But it was like...
Although we should say he was the youngest president ever.
That's true.
And still is.
But I think there's something to having a mildly young leader. Yeah, because they're going to be more connected with the general population. And yeah, they just represent a bit more of like a...
You look at them and you think, yeah, he's going to get it done for me. Or she.
Yeah.
But I mean, young, old, male, female, I think it's a little bit more just about the spirit within.
Yeah. I mean, that story, when I read that, because he... Like, the bullet was in him.
Yeah,
but he,
for the rest of his life.
Yeah, for the rest of his life. But he's like, if there's not blood coming out of my mouth, it hasn't reached my lungs. But I'm like, how much pain must you be in?
That's what we were saying about having an experienced person rather than someone who's only been raised around politics.
Yeah. Because if the president was shot now, even if it was in the shoulder, he'd probably go to the hospital. But no, Roosevelt was like...
That sounds so kind of like glory days. Well, if the president was shot in the chest now, he'd be...
He carted off in an ambulance. It's like, yeah, he probably should have been. It's just so funny, but like...
No president now could survive that.
Yeah.
But so there's the Roosevelt side of it, and there's also the Schrenk side, from which I think we can learn lessons, which is it's significant for how we interact with things we don't like, especially politically. I know he was, you know, he might have been mentally addled or whatever the case may be, but we can kind of tone it down and say, if you don't like what's happening politically, it can feel like today we are out of options, and you can either post memes about it. You're kind of caught between memes and violence. That seems like the options are presented to us today. But there are ways to express your displeasure with things while still being a positive force. And I think we can get into that next, when Roosevelt founded a political party.
Exactly. So he lost the nomination with the Republican Party, and he decided to, instead of just being like, well, go into hiding or whatever, he started his own political party, which is like, the thought of starting a political party is basically out of the question.
Yeah, I'm going to put the badge on screen as well right now, because it's a nice badge.
Yeah, so he started he started his own party with his own platform, his own group of people, and made a really cool badge, which, like, if that's not incentive to start a political party, I don't know what is, designing a badge. And I just think that's such a great example of the people having an initiative. Because part of the thing that made us found Solacene was basically the revelation of, like, corporations are made of people. Political parties are made of people. They're not just, like, their own things. But this is actually something that he opposed, was, like, the vision of corporations and stuff as like their own entities, because that makes them seem like they're just these evil forces sent by like the devil, basically.
Well, it's the exact same thing with politics, though, where people view them as just institutions.
Mhm.
And that's how you have people who've been voting for decades with loyalty to a party. It's like, that
Mhm.
doesn't make any sense. You know, if you have loyalty to anything in politics, it should be to politicians.
Mhm.
Even then, that's probably not a good idea. You should be loyal to ideas.
Yeah, and if there's nothing you like, then do something about it.
Yeah.
Because we were talking about how in Canada, at least we have kind of, we'll say 5 parties,
Mm.
really 3
Yeah,
and a half. You go to vote and you're like, well, I have to vote for one of the 2 big ones, otherwise my vote won't count.
Exactly.
But think about how many people are doing that.
Yeah.
A lot of people. Even people who are getting into politics think this, of like, I have to join one of the big 2 parties, otherwise my time in office won't count.
Mm.
But it's like, these are all individual people who, if we can change their minds, if we can change our own minds, maybe the NDP could win. Or maybe the Quebecois Separatist Party could win.
I think in the internet era, like, it's more feasible than it has been for like the last 80 years or so. And we should mention what happened with Roosevelt's party, which is precisely what people fear about a third party in America, which is that it split the votes and the Democrats ended up winning handily.
Yeah.
Although we should also mention it was the first and only time that a third party in America has received a higher percentage of votes than one of the big 2.
Mhm.
So it got like 27% of the votes, which was more than the Republican Party that he had left at the time.
Mhm.
So I still think it's a success in some ways, and I just think you need to kind of eat that failure and persevere with it over time.
Mhm.
It's the only way that you can kind of properly change things, I guess. I'm also going to read from the platform for that party a quote where it says, "To dissolve the unholy alliance between corrupt business and corrupt politics is the first task of the statesmanship of the day," which I just think is such a rousing line and maybe more relevant now over 100 years after its writing, which is kind of sad, but